Now buying this place where we're at, because I had the cash or my cash value and was able to close in 9 days, that was a real advantage.
Exactly.
Massive advantage. And you're right. It's not about whole life, because without responsibility, whole life isn't going to really do any good for a legacy. But honestly, with responsibility and not having whole life, you have a much greater chance of getting there. So, but if you can put responsibility and this together,
100%.
That's the key. Garrett Gunderson here, and I've got Chris Kirkpatrick with me. He's been on the channel before. We had a lot of fun. He brought the fire. He brought the information. It challenged some people's belief systems. People got upset. That's fine. We want to put the information out there, and we got a lot of questions that came in, so we're going to answer some of those. Like, one of this, the first question is, how can I build my own family bank for generational wealth? Like, and so there's a lot to talk about on this.
Absolutely.
You know, and we didn't talk about this last time, but let me break down what my feelings are about infinite banking concept.
Love it. I love it. Can't wait to hear this.
The word infinite I have a problem with.
For sure.
Infinite.
Yep. Unlimited.
How is it infinite?
Yeah.
Money supply is even not infinite. It's close.
Well, hopefully not.
Close.
In a perfect world, it's not.
You know, but that's a problem. Banking, I don't love the concept of banking from a standpoint of banks have had trouble. 2008, massive failures.
Yeah.
You know, the start of 2023, 3 major banks went under.
Yeah.
But I like the thought of like, where do you store your cash? And how do you get access to money to pay for things that are big purchases where a lot of people might go get a loan?
Absolutely.
But banking's not a term that I'm in love with either.
No, I mean the infinite banking concept, like just the terminology.
Would you put concept on your legacy?
Yeah, no,
Chris,
not at all.
I have a concept for you.
Exactly. Listen, I think the idea is if you take over the banking function in your life, the possibilities are infinite, right? Like that, like
fine.
If you that's the idea, and I'm with you. Like I share all your sentiments behind that. Like I think it's. My challenge is I think there's a lot of elements of it. I think 90% of it is really, really good. It's the 10%.
100% of your income going through insurance plan is what the infinite banking concept has. They've talked about that. When I interviewed Nelson, who created the concept, that's what he was telling me. I was like, I have a problem with that. Other people are borrowing and paying for bills with it, and I'm like,
insane.
What?
Insane.
That seems like a lot of work.
I have people that ask me that all the time. It's like, Chris, should I pay my bills and run all my bills through my policies? Like the answer is a hell no. Like no, it is absolutely just going to add to your expenses. It's not an efficient way to go. And I think the challenge is, without getting too technical, that you talk to all these people, and I think most infinite banking practitioners and people that really believe in the concept utilize non-direct recognition companies, which is basically saying when you take a loan against the policy, the company doesn't directly recognize that loan in the sense that
it doesn't hurt your dividend or your interest.
Exactly.
Right.
So when we've been living in this environment where dividend rates have been higher than the cost of money in a lot of situations.
Right, which is what your borrowing rate would be.
Exactly. So if the dividend was say 5.5 or 6, and the borrowing rate was 4.5, then that maybe works on a policy that's 10, 12, 13 years old.
Right, because we have cost of insurance up front.
Exactly.
It takes a while for this policy to capitalize.
Exactly.
And so I like that infinite banking got people to think about alternatives to just putting your money in savings accounts. Let's talk about the downside 100%. Of a savings account. Number one, FDIC, I don't really trust because they only have $123 billion, and 3 banks took $36 billion of that when they went under.
Wildly underfunded.
2, we have taxable interest.
Yep.
It had been extraordinarily low. It's starting to get better, obviously, with higher interest rates, but not protected in any way, shape, or form. It's just sitting there exposed.
It's taxable. Yeah.
Right. Taxable. It's exposed. I mean, there's not a lot of benefit to it other than it's very liquid.
Yep.
And you can put money in or not put money in. So it's fully flexible.
And I think long term, if you look at interest rates inside of savings accounts long term, you're going to lose purchasing power of that money if you just keep it there long term.
But I mean, at the same time, it's important to have liquidity.
For sure.
And a lot of people they don't have enough liquidity because they're overly invested and overly leveraged because there's no real commissions that come into savings accounts.
Right.
It's just you put money there. It benefits the bank for sure because they're turning around and lending that money out.
Sure.
But who's advertising it? And here's what's even worse. Hey, Chris, I have 3 to 6 months expenses. Is it 3 or is it 6? Because that's a substantial difference
Well,
And is 6 even adequate?
no. And
Right.
So here's the deal. The U.S. Department of Labor says that for every $10,000 of income you earn, it's going to take you a month to find a job. And that's in a good economy right now. So what happens when things get rough? So if you think about the importance of like, what is the purpose of having a rainy day fund, an emergency fund? It's not for when times are good and the economy's good. It's for when stuff hits the fan, right?
Right.
And if that's the case, it's probably going to be harder to find a job. And
If you're
so
at 3 months and you have to start tapping into that,
you're in trouble.
you're puckering.
You're absolutely
Right.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
And I get it. For a lot of people, it's hard to even get anything because of inflation and because of, tough understanding of like what to do financially. And, they have student loan debt and higher interest rates, and maybe they're on variable loans. So I get that there's this mess that's really been created. That's why it's important to kind of get ahead of it, or at least figure out ways to solve it. And this question where they're asking like, how do I create a multi-generational family bank? Well, I get it, because when I wrote What Would the Rockefellers Do, I'm talking about how you could eventually exit the banking system when you have a big enough trust, or, that you're growing, and then money funds that when the death benefit comes in tax-free. And then ultimately future generations can borrow from that versus borrow from a bank. Now your family's earning the interest instead of paying the interest to a bank. The downside of that is, who's the underwriter? How do you make sure the kids don't just blow the money and they value what they get? But if you could only have half the hoops to jump through versus all the hoops to jump through, if you could charge a lower interest rate so it's more manageable, it also becomes where there's huge opportunities. Like I was talking to this guy and he was saying that he lost a real estate deal 20 years ago. Talked to the guy. I think I might have mentioned this to you before. And it's because there was a huge insurance policy that his grandfather had set up, and they could just use that cash to acquire. So that's what I'm talking about, is alternatives than just going to the bank and saying, I need to borrow money, or I want to earn interest, because they're not good at paying you interest. It's really low.
Right.
And when you go to borrow, it's really onerous. And when times are the best to acquire something, it's harder to get money during those times.
So when capital dries up, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I got my HELOC. HELOCs get frozen when things get bad.
Removed.
Exactly.
Totally.
And so access to capital is the most important thing in economic hardship times, right? Or times of economic hardship. And so like having this pool of money that you have contractual access to is so important.
So this is how I'd answer the question.
Yeah.
First and foremost, we have to look at the framework of wealth.
Yep.
And if we're talking about generational wealth, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
First off, I would say you've got to build financial independence. We have enough cash flow coming in from assets to cover your basic expenses. When you have that, you have choice. When you don't have it, you're kind of really in bondage financially, that you have to go to work that day. You have to trade time for money, or and it's the grind for a lot of people. Yeah. So if you're financially independent, you have some room to say, how can I invest in my heirs?
Totally.
How can we spend some time in a family retreat and start creating some traditions for our family that are meaningful, rituals that we do on a regular basis that really connect us and bond us? And how do we create symbols that demonstrate who we are as a family, so we think and live intentionally, just like any business or religion might do, but do that within the family unit. And ultimately, yes, in What Would the Rockefellers Do, I say, if you're using overfunded whole life insurance, especially the whole life part, overfunding is not actually the most important part when we're talking about legacy.
Correct.
We're talking about having that money come in, because there might be high tax rates that confiscate your wealth over time. There could be high inflation like we've seen recently that confiscates wealth over time. It could be low interest rates or high interest rates that change how your investments perform or your money, so that death benefit comes in. Just like the Rockefellers on the 6th generation, that keeps coming in and it replenishes the trust. Or if there was a mistake, it really helps overcome some of those economic errors or those those corrections. And the thing is, it's hard to understand how many mistakes people are going to make over a lifetime, because some lessons are only learned when we go through them. And sometimes it's a matter of timing and luck. Sometimes our luck is such that we just bought at the right time. Other times we buy at the wrong time. Yeah. And you learn those lessons through that experience. And so it's nice to have a death benefit that comes in and replenishes. But there's people that say, Chris, it's so expensive. And Dave and Susie say, buy term and invest the difference. And, there's a lot of people that have a lot of like vignettes or little sayings that don't have teeth to it, but it's just like a repetitive, I heard this, I'm going to say this. You have to borrow your own money. Actually, you don't have to borrow money to get access.
Right. No, you don't have to. I mean, a lot of times it's the most efficient way, but like I look at it like this: is like there's no other area in life that, or I guess some people are always looking for the cheap thing, right? Like you're just looking for the cheap thing in every scenario of life.
Jay-Z said they know the price of everything, the value of nothing.
Exactly, right? And that's the deal. And so, like to me, I just challenge everybody to think like, what are you looking to accomplish? And I think anybody that has an axe to grind with whole life is just not looking at a long-term perspective, right? Like, because
it does have problems in the short run.
You have to commit to a long-term strategy and a long-term plan. And if you don't have a vision that you're able to execute from a long-term perspective, and you're not going to be the person you need to be to execute on that vision, well, then it's not right for you.
Right. It's a tool.
It's a tool.
And if you don't understand how to use the tool,
right,
then it's not going to be that useful.
100%.
Right. So I agree with that. Now, if you go to GarrettGunderson.com/offer, you can get Killing Sacred Cows.
Yep.
Read chapter 7 in that book. It's going to help with this. And you can get What Would the Rockefellers Do? And that whole book is on this concept right here. And that's going to help you out to understand this. But to me, the key, if you're talking about multi-generational wealth, what you're really talking about is how do you establish a set of rules, philosophies, signposts, and structures that prepare the future generation so they're not entitled, but instead they are a steward over what's coming.
Yeah.
And if we're just handing people money, it's a dangerous situation. That's why most of the time it gets decimated.
Well, there's no accountability with that, right? Like this creates a system and a filter that you run all your decisions through, and also sets in place a set of rules that holds people accountable.
The easiest part is to pass money on.
Absolutely.
And pass it on tax efficiently. You plan early enough, or you understand basic strategies like, domestic asset protection, trust ownership of a policy, or having a trust and a will that's done early enough, and how the assets get put into there. Like you can deal with a lot of income or a lot of assets. What's hard to deal with is if that child doesn't understand their value, doesn't have purpose, doesn't have some type of vision, doesn't invest in their skill sets, doesn't feel unconditional love within the family unit, then that money is probably going to be as much of a curse as it ever could be a blessing.
Absolutely.
Because what if that money diminishes purpose because they know that it's there? What if that money gives them a feeling of guilt or shame, or they want that over the time with the person that actually created it in the first place? Or what if they didn't understand the philosophies and frameworks that brought that money to fruition, and now all of a sudden they feel like they don't deserve it? There's so much complexity in all of that. And so I think that this is really about investing in people, 100%. And it's about investing time more than it is investing money.
When people, to me, comment against whole life and they talk about the cost and the inefficiency and like all this stuff, and they go, well, why would I put money here when I could just invest over here? First of all, you're not comparing apples to apples. It's not an investment. It's not the same risk profile, all these things. But let's just put that aside and start thinking about like, all right, from a long-term perspective, life doesn't exist on a spreadsheet, right? Like you just said, like you can't spreadsheet this stuff out. You don't know what your kids and grandkids and like who they're going to be, what their character is going to be. You're going to be gone probably by the time this all comes into play. So you have an opportunity to impart values and rules and frameworks and structures and all these things that can have generational ripple effects that no other asset in the world is going to be able to do for you.
Right. Well, I have this tool, GarrettGunderson.com/Richest Life.
Okay.
So, and inside of there's like 6 downloads. So now there's even What Would the Rockefellers Do? Killing Sacred Cows. It's a bit of a duplicate, but there's this 3-part legacy document.
Okay.
And the first part is just 3 basic building blocks of building your trust. And part of it is hiring your kids and teaching them the value of work and how they pay for things and how that's very tax efficient. And then the basic wills and trust structures. But then the next 2 pieces are the family constitution, which is actually your own words that are the preamble to the trust that leave signposts for future generations. So you can think deliberately about guidance and values, and you can think really clearly about philosophies and contribution, and then have that more dynamically govern what's happening. And then there's the family retreat structure, which Rich Christensen created with Legato. And that's about when you have conversations with the kids, what traditions you create and how that gets implemented, the conversations you have around money. And so I don't really invest in the stock market at all. Like someone told me on my drive up that the market's lost 5% overall in the last 2 weeks. And I had no clue, which is beautiful.
I know.
Not to have to worry about that, right?
So nice,
so I could focus on other things to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
But the structure of investing in your heirs instead of investing in stocks, investing in their skill sets, investing in like who they are as a person and developing their emotional intelligence and helping them overcome some of the difficulties and obstacles a lot of people never deal with, you know, because you and I have done a lot of personal work to figure out emotional intelligence and overcome like false beliefs that we developed when we were kids. And that work can be really hard, but so rewarding. And so, you know, like that kind of stuff is how you really create multi-generational wealth, is how you invest time and deliberate philosophy. And look, my son's my 18-year-old's reading my books. He's now editing, not editing, he's mining some of my videos that I record when I'm on a coaching call. So he's now going to get all that exposure, and he's traveling with me. Sweet. That's part of how it really gets ingrained, is because it's not just like here and there where dad's saying something, but it's like part of his system and daily habits.
Think about that. Like, your kids are so lucky to have you. I mean, most kids, you know, don't have parents that are so intentional and like dynamic, but so many people, if you look at the world and look at the media and the news and like just what most people spend their time wasting their life thinking about, it's all external stuff that you can't control. And people complain about what's going on in the world, and they're not realizing like none of that matters. Like, just sit and focus on yourself and your family and your community and the things that you can actually control. And that's a big part of what we're talking about, you know, there's so much peace beyond rates of return, beyond like control. There's peace of knowing that if you just come into this and you take radical self-accountability for yourself, for your kids, for your family, and you just commit to saying, hey, it ends here, right? Like, I'm going to, you know, plant this flag. This is what it's going to be like moving forward. This is what I'm committed to. Like, and you really look at it through that lens and you don't worry about the rest of the world, this becomes part of the solution. And it's not about whole life or mutual funds or what, it's a matter of values and beliefs and what you stand for. And I think, you know, coming back to the question, when you look at like, how do I start a family bank, or what is a family, like understanding what the intended purpose of it is. And I think a lot of influencers, social media people that talk about infinite banking, if you will, they focus on the wrong elements. They focus on how can you make money buying cars? Like, how can you, which the last like 4 cars I bought, I just paid cash. It's insane.
And even in What Would the Rockefellers Do, I talked about when I bought this car, using my policy and how I benefited and was ahead, and we showed the numbers. That's microeconomically, that was effective at the time. Sure.
And there are situations and there are circumstances where that can work, depending on the interest rate environment, the loan costs.
Now, buying this place we're at, because I had the cash from my cash value and was able to close in 9 days, that was a real advantage.
Exactly.
Massive advantage. And you're right, it's not about whole life, because without responsibility, whole life isn't going to really do any good for a legacy. But honestly, with responsibility and not having whole life, you have a much greater chance of getting there. So, but if you can put responsibility and this together,
100%.
That's the key, because now it helps with buoyancy and contingency, and we don't know all the things that are going to happen. So having that stability and access to cash along the way is really important, but not access that's so easy to go blow. It's like intentional.
Yeah.
Like I've never used my cash value for something that was just to buy, but I've used my savings account
for sure
for that before, because it's a little too easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like, and that's what I always say is like, and there's no judgment here. We're all in this place, but you know, you are where you are because of who you are, right? And chances are you're not happy with where you are. You're not happy. I'm not. I mean, I'm content, happy, but like we want more. We feel a calling.
I'm just learning all the time.
Right. Exactly.
It's been a difficult year of lessons for me.
And that's part of life, and that's a beautiful thing. No matter what level you hit, hopefully you want.
But it's hopefully on the bigger vision, on the things that really matter to you.
Exactly.
Because I just think that being alive and in the world means we're going to have turbulence. Right. Growth requires turbulence. Living in the world is turbulent. Mm-hmm. It's not like we're just going to have complete Zen peace every day.
100%.
So the question is, are you doing the things that matter to you in that?
Yep.
And how's that showing up as an example to your children? How's that showing up as an example to the worth of yourself?
Yep.
And look, all that stuff is difficult because it's hard to have these conversations. It's harder to set up your legacy and carve out time for that when there's a good TV show on, or sports that's happening, or whether it's the Super Bowl or the World Series or whatever it might be. There's so many seductive, entertaining things and so many busy things that people get caught up in that it takes such a degree of intention to say, I care enough about legacy and I want to give this gift of contribution, not just this gift of money, to future generations. let's write what that looks like instead of just let society deem that, because society's done a terrible job with it.
And to finish it off from my perspective, I would say that, like, when you look at the family banking, outside of the spreadsheets, outside of the numbers, outside of everything, it just all comes back to that self-accountability. It all comes back to being intentional about accomplishing and going after what you want to chase. Like, whatever that life is for you, it's different for everybody, right? But that's fine. Just be intentional about it. And when you do that, there's no other area in life that you can be successful at. Like, I call it in my book, I call it the 5 F's: faith, family, finance, fitness, and freedom, right? Like, in every area, with your faith, with your family, your relationships, your marriage, your fitness, you can't outsource your success in those things.
You have to have responsibility.
And you can't have freedom without having success in those other areas, right? And like, but somehow with money, with finance, we've been like tricked and lied to and duped into the fact that you're too dumb to get this. You just got to give up control and give your money to some financial advisor, and they're gonna take care of you. So you give,
and then that financial advisor is giving up their control and handing it to someone that they've never met.
Exactly. So there's like 3 degrees of separation of you reaching the results in your life.
Each degree of separation has more risk and less accountability.
It's when you really think about it, it's complete insanity.
I think that just because someone's better at taking a test, right? Like, if someone goes to a school that's really prestigious, they have to study really hard, and they have to take these tests that are very complicated. Doesn't mean they're better at value creation.
Totally.
And they might be better at value extraction, unfortunately. And just convincing us not to invest in ourselves. Convincing us that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not whatever, we're not enough, and we just got to hand it over, because it takes a leap of faith to invest in ourselves and be like, you're going to make mistakes along the way. Those are part of the lessons. And it might not have as much money in an account as investing in yourself. Is just, if you put it in a savings account tomorrow, you have to like think about legacy in a broader perspective than just what you do with your money today. It has to be like, what's the philosophy and structure you live your life in?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the curse of the microwave mindset that we live in, right? Like, everybody wants results like immediately, and that's just the way it is.
What's the hack?
What's the hack?
Like, and by the way, hack, when I think of that word, I think of like, that's a hack. It's like, that's a fugazi. It's the concept of hack bothers me.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, there's different ways to look at it. I actually like the word hacking in certain ways. Like, if it's emulation.
So hacking is we've gotten in someone's account that we're not supposed to be in.
That could be.
Hack is someone's a hack up there. They're not a good comedian.
Okay, fair enough.
Hack is, I know people that spend 100 times more time and effort on the hack than just doing the work.
Sure.
Like, in health, I'm like, hey, maybe if you just walked, got some sun, drank some water, got some sleep, there's certain basics that, maybe putting,
sure,
E-stems all over your head,
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of negative connotations, but to push back at you a little bit, what I would say is, like, you've created formulas and frameworks, right? That have been wildly successful. And I would argue anybody that's not implementing them in some way, shape, or form is foolish. You've created this structure for people, whether they work with you personally or not, to hack that framework, to like follow it. Like that would be
I'm more like they're utilizing it.
Yeah. Okay.
And becoming more efficient.
Okay.
Hack is like cheating. Like, I have a problem with the word.
Okay. Fair enough.
I don't have a problem with efficiency at all. I don't have a problem with effectiveness. I don't have a problem with systems and frameworks. I have a problem with the thought of, we can skip steps. And in skipping those steps and having a shortcut, what it gets people to do is look for things that are not real, and then they invest in things that can never give what was promised because it was a hack. How many hacks are on TikTok right now giving terrible advice?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's absolutely horrible.
I'm telling you, it's just like,
fair enough.
I think that we both agree that knowledge and the right wisdom can help us avoid mistakes, can help us accelerate results. And part of it is like, just here's a way to accelerate results rather than accumulate by taking a bunch of risk on your money and waiting for a long period of time without any accountability. Focus on cash flow first, but plug your financial leaks first, because that's money that then comes into your life that's not going to an institution or a government. That's back in your pocket. Then invest part of that back in yourself and part of that into a cash flowing asset. That is going to accelerate wealth much faster than accumulation. Like, we could prove it out. I proved it out in What Would the Rockefellers Do with numbers.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like, it's, you'd have to get like 400% returns to compete on that, on like your baseline, on the first $75,000 of income.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, but some people might call that a hack, but semantics matter because wealth is built through language.
Yeah. Well, I just, so
and it's the mindset that I have the issue with.
And that's fine. I wrote a book, Cash Flow Hacking, right? Like, so,
so you're like, dude.
And like, I get what you're saying and I agree with you. I come from the marketing world with like,
but it's weird because I don't think of you as a hacker. I think of you as a truth teller that's exposing what is a hack.
Totally. And what I would say though, is we just have a different like verbiage, right? And so to me, I looked at it from the world, like when I got into the marketing world, you want to,
well, you would look at like, if I help someone save tax, that's a hack. But I just look at that as like, that's intelligence.
Sure. But now if I know you rather than me, to me, the hack isn't what because you took intelligence and did it. From anybody who's like learning this for the first time, a hack is a shortcut. And a shortcut isn't like a get rich quick or making it easier or anything. It's just saying, hey, rather than me recreate the wheel and figure it out on my own, Garrett's done this successfully, so I'm going to follow his systems. That's kind of like hacking your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we could talk circles.
It's funny because you're a detailed thinker. You're a truth teller. You're like showing how this all works.
Yeah.
And yet you have a book with the word hack in it. It just doesn't fit for me.
Okay. That's fair.
Cause like, here's what an IUL person would say is like, oh, that's a hack.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get everything your whole life does, but you're going to be better off because of this, this, and this. I'm like, actually, that's not true.
I came from the online marketing world of ClickFunnels, and so everything is funnel hacking and funnel, everything is like emulate, you go through and you find the most efficient processes before you execute it in your life. And to me, that's what hacking is finding efficiency and then
sometimes
creating it in your life.
Sometimes ClickFunnels is stealing other people's stuff and then just putting it as your own. Because I've seen many ClickFunnels sites with my stuff on it.
Yeah, right. And same here. Like, it's crazy.
But see, that's the danger of using the word hack.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
you made me want to change the name of my book now.
Hey, dude, you know what? I've had those things where I'm writing a book and then I change the name halfway through and I'm like, oh my God, you know how much more work this is going to be. Yes. But it's like, I just think of who you are and what you represent for this industry.
Yeah.
And you're the opposite of a hack. You're the one that's actually the truth teller.
I got to write a new book.
Yeah,
that's
dude,
cool.
We'll just do it again. Do another book.
Do it again.
Just do another book.
Fair enough.
That's all good.
It's funny because I've been working on Cash Flow Hacking 2.0, and now I'm just going to call it something else.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, man.
Okay.
And then you just got to witness that live.
There we go. Yep.
So, we'll see if you want that in the video or not.
No, we will. It's fine. All right. It's happening. It's happening.
So here's the question was,
how
do I create multi-generational wealth through banking? And the key is I gave you some resources that you can go and grab, like read What Would the Rockefellers Do? But ultimately there isn't really a shortcut in multi-generational wealth. Intention is required. Strategy and emphasis, like time with your children, your grandchildren, the people in your lives, and intentional time where there's a time to talk about traditions and rituals, and there's time to like really focus on what do we want this family to stand for? Who are we? Just like any organization might do. That every business has a logo and it has colors and it has values and hopefully it has a vision if it wants to sustain. Do that within your family. Invest in people. Help them discover their soul purpose, SOUL, and just shower them with a lot of love and really help them discover what it is that they want to do, not by telling them what to do, but I look at it as like taking them to the, I don't know if it's a carnival or if you're going to like one of those
fair or something.
Yeah, like it's like try all the rides.
Sure.
Which one do you love? Don't force them into the one that you love most. Let them pick the one that's going to be aligned with their energy. And just be intentional about this. So, any final thoughts from you?
You don't just make your kids ride the roller coaster until they vomit. That's not a good thing to do.
Keep going. That's until you like it. I like it. You have to like
exactly.
it. That's how the world kind of worked in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
This is a good career. You go do this career.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to do that.
No, I think
it's a good career.
I think that's dead on. And I think from a family banking structure, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's understanding. Don't think so much like most influencers are talking about with the short-term benefits. You talk about the overfunded component of it can provide short-term benefits to liquidity, but that's not all it's about. You have to think bigger than that.
Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it.
And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.